In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the bounty hunters in Star Wars Shatterpoint. Now, I've already done a sort of tag rundown video on the bounty hunters. I did that a while ago. I'm not going to talk about every single bounty hunter card. I'm going to talk about bounty hunter list building, where I am at it, what kind of things I'm thinking of, because I've been trying to build a bounty hunters list to run alongside my Rebels Cassian PLC list to round out my Premier offering. So we'll have a ramble about that. So I think a bounty hunter list has three non-negotiables in. There are three characters that you have to take for your bounty hunter list to function, and those are Cad Bane, IG-88B, and the Mandalorian. There are some people out there who like to substitute the Mandalorian for Princess Leia, Charming the Last, which I sort of get because playing bounty hunters, you do sometimes just really wish you had some out activation movement. They don't have out activation movement really. Cad Bane can jump himself out of activation for a force, but that's about it. So I have seen that variant knocking around. The trouble is, of course, I'm not even going to experiment with it because I want to use Princess Leia in my Rebels list, and also the Mandalorian is dead good, so I'm putting him here as a non-negotiable. But I do think CAD and IG-88 together are kind of what makes the list work. It's all about IG-88's ability, I engineer success, yet it eludes me, coupled with CAD's identity. I'll take on any job for the right price, and we'll cover that in detail. So we'll talk about the Mandalorian first. His identity, he has a revenge trigger, right? This is the way. So when an enemy character wounds an allied unit, after the effective resolve, one character in this unit may heal twice and then reposition, and then each other bounty hunter, Mandalorian, or scoundrel within 4 can remove a condition from itself, and then they gain a hunker. So this is really good. It does have a lot of moving parts, but I think getting to just reposition Mando forwards when someone wounds something, it can give your opponent real pause for thought about whether it's worth them wounding someone. Just because potentially you can go and steal a point with the Mando's reposition. It does mean that you kind of tend to want to reserve Mando as you get in early game because you're hoping that he gets a couple of repositions up the board so that when he then activates, he can go and do stuff. Although he is reasonably mobile, he does get a dash as part of a clan of 2, so we'll sail into a clan of 2. You pair force, you get through a dash, and then evil ally units of bounty hunter, Mandalorian, or scoundrel within 2, which is a list building restraint, which we're going to satisfy for bounty hunter list building, right? One character in this unit may immediately make a 5 dice attack, or may choose an enemy character within 3 and push it 2 away. So this means that the Mandalorian can have really powerful activations. He can head towards a point. If there's someone on a point, he can shoot them. If he manages to shove them off so that they aren't contesting the points anymore, then he can spend his force and do a 5 dice into them to get the wound. If he doesn't manage to shove them off, then he can clan of 2. Or then he can, the whole ability is clan of 2, then he can push. Or you could shoot somebody, push them off with your shoves, and then if there's a second model on the point, you could use your dice displacement to get them off the point. So he's really good at taking a point that is really well held by your opponent, because in Shatterpoint, all too often it get if you're facing somebody and they've managed to stack a point with 2 models and they aren't in the same unit, then a lot of the time it's like, cool, if I've activated a single figure, so a primary, secondary, or a single model support, I can't do anything about that point because I can't interact with both those models. Now, if they're a support, a 2-body support, you can go for the wound, fine. But Mando's real strength is that he can go onto a point and go, okay, cool. There's, let's say there's, I don't know, there's like an ISB and Gideon Haskell, and they're both on the point. Like almost any other figure in the game physically couldn't interact with both of those things. There are a couple of things that can. I mean, Shakti's got the Force Pulse, but I think having a figure that ultimately can just interact with two separate things on a point is really, 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 really powerful. And the Mandalorian is one of the most powerful pieces that this list has, just in terms of individual power. For that reason, really, and he's also got a lot of other really cool stuff on his card, but that's a big part of it, right? Fearless and inventive. We've seen this before. Pay a force, get 2 bonus dice if you're meleeing against multiple characters. This is fine when it comes up. You're paying a force, you're getting 2 dice. Great if you're going in for a support, or quite often he'll be trying to. His ideal thing, like I've just explained, is he's trying to tackle points that have multiple people on. Now, granted, often you're wanting to shoot because your expertise table for shooting is slightly better insofar as it's 2 crits on 2 expertise rather than a crit and a hit. But yeah, this is there if you want it. You've got the option of doing the magic hand thing, which you're also getting extra dice at shooting on the bring your in cold side, which is my preferred side of the card, right? You got to do the magic hand thing, which is a reflect, which is fine. Mando is really difficult to kill, and so the fact that he's so difficult to kill and he has this generally means a lot of time people just don't want to bother. But if he's in the right places being annoying, then just ignoring him and your opponent's like, cool, you're ignoring him, he's on these points, that's fine. And then, yeah, so his stances, he has frankly absurd defensive expertise, right? So 1 expertise being a block and a hit to a normal, 2 expertise being 2 blocks and a crit to a miss is really powerful. He's also rolling 6 dice, which is loads. In terms of his stances, having played a couple of games with him now, I'm really just favouring leaving him on Bring You In Cold almost all the time. Yeah, you've got the shove on 2 instead of a shove on 1 and shove on 3. You've got a bit extra damage. You've also got that reposition on 4 or that free use of a clan of 2 on 4, both of which are pretty good. And you've got that extra dice at range. And if you compare the expertise tables, 2 expertise with the sniper rifle being 2 crits is really good compared to 2 expertise being 1 hit on the blast pistol side is really annoying. And even if you're in melee, okay, yes, on Bring You In Warm, if you only roll 1 expertise, you're getting a crit, and if you get 1 expertise on Bring You In Cold, you're getting a hit. But if you get to that 2, and 2 feels really common, you get the crit and the hit, whereas on Bring You In Warm, you have to get to 3 to get the crit and the hit. So I think his expertise table is just better on both across the 2. The only time I'm flipping to Bring You In Warm is if the thing I need to do, right, if they've got 2 models on a point, right, and one is sort of steadfast and the other is positioned directly on the point. So whichever way you cut it to take the point, I need to get 2 shoves and then use my clan of 2 push on the other character. Then you're going to flip to Bring You In Warm and try and be like, okay. I mean, and this is basically if you got someone like Mace Windu with his bubble of steadfast, so that everybody's steadfast, so you need to get 2 shoves and then the other play. Because normally, if there's 1 steadfast character, you'd be like, okay, well, I'll force push the steadfast character, and I'll try and get the 2 shoves on the non-steadfast character. So only in that very rare scenario is that I think when I'm flipping over to Bring It In Warm. But maybe I'm playing the Mandalorian wrong. I've not got that many reps in with him, but that's what my current thinking is. Now he is I'm going to skip forward a little bit just to make sure we're all aware. So IG88B really is the thing that makes this list sing, and the thing he does that makes the list sing is I engineer success, yet it eludes me, where you spend a force, When an allied bounty hunter character makes an attack as part of a combat action, if the target is contesting an active objective you don't control, you can use the ability to add 3 dice to the attack roll. If the defender's not wounded, you lose momentum. Now, I really feel like you use this more often than you don't. When I first reviewed the bounty hunters, because I've recycled some of the slides, and I was going through the text and rereading it, and I was like, oh, this is a gamble, and you're going to have to work carefully when you use it and when you don't use it. And I think actually you don't. If you have the force and you're attacking someone and they're on an objective, then you use it most of the time, because even if you know that you can't get the wound and therefore you will lose momentum, if getting down your tree is going to help you get pushes and get that objective and move the struggle token towards you, right, then it's probably worth doing, right? Because most people, most of the time, would trade a momentum for the struggle token moving towards them. We're going to talk more about that when we come to do IGATB. I wanted to skip forward to it because I wanted to talk about it in terms of the Mandalorian. So the Mandalorian's getting 7 dice, but then he can, for a force, if he's being run with IGATB, he can be rolling 10 dice. So it's not unreasonable for him to start to get to up near the end of that tree. Right now, his tree does top out. Bring You In Cold does top out at what, 5, 6, 7, 8. Technically, you can do 10 damage. That would require 3, 4, 5 successes. I'm not that lucky at dice games, but technically you can do 10 damage. And honestly, 5 successes on 10 dice, where you're getting 2 or 3 crits, 2 crits on 2 expertise, isn't that unreasonable? Potentially. So it's an interesting one. You've also got the thing, if you're rolling 10 dice, you might hit that weird little headshot row where you get 4 expertise, then you get to do 5 base damage, and then you can do 10 damage a different way, right? Because you can do 5 plus 3 down your tree, hopefully, and then you get the other 5 that way. So he does become really quite powerful with those extra 3 dice as well. Yeah. So CAD. So CAD's a really fiddly character to get good activation with. He is. I want to talk about his I'll take on any job for the right price, which is really what you're bringing him for, and that in fact also that he has 9 squad points. So whenever an allied character wounds an enemy unit and they've had to resolve, you refresh force, heal cab, and if it's a bounty hunter, which everyone on the list should be, you refresh a second force. So this is what really keeps the show on the road, because you are regularly spamming force into IG-88B's ability. But in theory, getting all those extra dice means that you're going wound, 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 wound if it's working out properly. And so when you're wounding, you're getting 2 force back, so you're getting 1 force. You're going 1 force up net each time. Now, granted, you're not going to wound every time you shoot something with anything on your team, unless you get good dice, right? It is aggro list is a dicey proposition. That's fair. But it just means that you can constantly be getting that force back in, and you can afford to not get the wound and lose the momentum if then the next time you shoot that target that's mostly dead, you get the wound, and then you get the 2 force back, so then you've worked out force neutral as well. And so that's really why CAD is key to the list. Now, in terms of what you actually do with CAD, he is a finesse character in a lot of ways, okay? So he's got this how about you step aside, so for a force, choose an enemy within 3. If they're on an objective they're contesting, they can dash away from the objective. Then after the moves are resolved, if the chosen character is no longer contesting the objective, they're disarmed. If they're contesting, they will be exposed and pinned. That often works out to being you spend a force and you expose and pin somebody, which can be really good. Bear in mind, people can use this to move into engagement with CAD and be exposed and pinned, which you might not want for one of his later abilities, but honestly, if you're on As Long As I Get Paid, which is the side I prefer of his card, you don't really care if they're in melee or at range with you. He can jump for force, which is fine, is good, yeah. Then he's got his reaction. Nobody gets between me and my job. So whenever an allied unit makes a combat action, so you can then pay a force, as long as you're not engaged. If you're not engaged, but you are within 4, you can just throw in 2 extra damage, which is nice. If none of the target characters are within 4, then you can jump towards one of the target characters. So this gets you a little bit of extra move. It can be quite tricky to have Cad in the middle of the board where he's going to be useful and within 4, but not in engagement range, right? Throw in his 2 extra damage. But if nothing else, this is getting you some early game movement up the board with Cad when he's in deployment before he's activated, which is nice. And 2 damage is helpful. Now, I believe, if you've spent for IG-88B's ability, if the defender's not wounded by the attack, lose momentum. So you would still lose that momentum if you killed them with the 2 damage from Cad's reaction. But it's still handy because you still get the wound, you still get the force refresh, and everything else like that. So it's just a case of, and I can't claim. I've played a few games with Cad. I've played him with Seps. I've played him with Bounty Hunter List. Played him a lot, right? But I've still not quite got the hang of it. He tends to get him into the mid board, and then he usually ends up in combat on a point with somebody, right, being engaged, and therefore not really throwing in his bonus damage here and there. But if nothing else, it's some nice extra bits of movement, which is nice. And then stance-wise, like I say, I tend to be in as long as I get paid. For the damage, he can do a really impressive 6 damage on 3, which is pretty cool. That said, his other stance is also doing 5 damage on 3, right? So it's somewhat even odds. I think his expertise tables are better on this side as well. Only marginally. It's just that hit into a crit on the 2 to 3 side, and also in combat that hit on 1 to a crit on 1. There will be times when you look at it, and this is one where you want to have both sides in mind. There'll be times when you look at it and go, well, actually, I want the jump on 2 from need zone introduction, or I want the shove on 3. Yeah. I feel like trying to get to a shove on 3. Yeah, you can get those extra dice, but I just feel like with the way this list works, you want to throw those extra dice, and you want to be getting the wound, and so you want to be taking advantage of the fact that as long as I get paid, you can get the 9 damage on 5 successes, which, given that you'd be rolling 10 dice, again, I feel like getting 5 successes. I had a game recently against my wife where I rolled a lot of 10 dice attacks and wound up with 1 success. So, like, the poor luck. But I feel like a lot of the time you're on 10 dice, 5 successes should be, like, possible, there you go. Like I say, that always we're going to say it, the thing of being trying to, and this is very much an aggro list, and trying to build an aggro list is that you are beholden to the dice more than you are with like a more movement focused list or a list of doing things with abilities, and that's just the way it is. And I'm learning to cope with that. I'm learning to cope with when the dice just betray me in that way, for sure. And we look at IG-88B. So IG-88B is really good. He brings his amazing ability, I engineer success, yet it eludes me, which, as I say, is making this whole thing work. But the rest of his cards really awesome as well. And he does cost 5 for sure. So his tactic, high priority target, he gets to do a dash, and then if you're within 5 of an enemy, you get a free focus. You're not that worried about the free focus because it's 1 dice, so it's taking you from 7 to 8. It's not as if, what I'm saying is, it's not as if he's got sharpshooter or impact. So it's not like it was some characters where you really want to get that focus because you've got I've got impact too, so I'm getting a focus to get 3 bonus dice. But it's there. It's really a nice to have because you don't have a lot of control over this. It's a tactic. You've got to do it at the start of your activation. So you dash, it's free, and then if you happen to be within 5 of someone, hey, I've got the focus. He's always gets the job done is kind of interesting. It does cost a force, and then you have to be in melee, right? So you choose someone that you're in melee with within range 2. You roll 3 dice, and if you get a block, then they're strained. If you get an expertise, they're disarmed, and if you get a miss, then they are exposed. And you're fishing for that expose because that's the one that's going to do you the most good. Um, strain, the strain can be quite nice just because you've got that strain on 4 on that top path. So it means that you have the possibility to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 damage, 7, right? So you can do 7 damage that way, which I think is your highest damage like road. So if someone has precisely 7 health and you want to do precisely 7 damage, you'd be like, well, I'll see if I can get the strain on you that way. That's a possibility. Of course, you're in melee, so like if you're considering always gets the job done, you are in melee, so you then also can get an extra damage from 1 expertise as well. So you could try and reach 8 damage if you know if you really want to stack up and make these kind of plays. And to help him try and smooth over the odds, he has calculated plans, which just means that for free, at least before he's wounded, just for free when he makes a combat action, you can re-roll 2 of your misses or 2 of your expertise. His expertise table isn't great, so sometimes you'll look at it and go, actually, don't need that second expertise dice or that 4th expertise dice. I'll re-roll those, which is nice as well. But yeah, the main thing you're bringing for him for is his I engineer success and yet it eludes me, which is really very, very good. And it's what makes the list kind of work. His stance, like I say, he can do a decent amount of damage, sort of 7 damage, 8 damage. It's possible for him. He can do 2 shoves if he goes straight down the middle and gets 3 successes, which again, he's rolling 10 or 11 dice, right? Potentially, so with rerolls potentially. So, like, he's got a decent chance of getting this stuff, which is really cool. Or if you really hit the home run and you get 5 down your tree, you can get a repo, which is fine. I don't think I've ever seen that repo, but it is there. I kind of feel like a repo at the end of the tree is really bad because you can't plan on it. And then you're like, oh, I've got this repo. I don't really like I'm on a point now because my plan was to take this point, right? Repo's near the start. You can plan on it. So it's like, oh, cool. I'll go over here. I'll shoot this random thing I don't care about. I'll get this repo and then I'll go over here and do this other thing. But repo's at the end of the tree. It's like, cool. I've made that all out attack now and I'm stuck. So, but yeah, he's really good. He makes the list work properly and in and of himself, he's really good. Like, I think anyway. So that's, yeah. So now we get into some interesting conversation because, okay, so there is a basic list that you can build. If you sit down and go, hey, I just want all the bounty hunters, all the things with bounty hunter tags, this is where your list kind of just fits. So you end up with CAD, IG-88B, the bounty hunters, the Mandalorian, Bosk, and IG-11. And then there are some substitutions that you can make on that basic list. I know there's other lists you can do. I'm going to talk about some other builds later on, but we're just going to start off with. So some people will tell you to swap bounty hunters for pirates. You could consider swapping the Bosk for Grief Cargo. Nobody likes Grief Cargo, but we're going to talk about it anyway because it is an option. And you could swap swapping IG-11 for Han and Chewie in it for the money. Let's talk about reviewing Bosk. I didn't edit the slide because I'm still talking about Lando, which is not what this presentation is about. But there we go. Bosk has regeneration, so this is really funny because if Bosk isn't strained, then he can regenerate and remove all damage and conditions on himself. He has payday. We don't really care about payday in a bounty hunters list, but one of the funny things you can do with Bosk is, let's say he has a pile of conditions on him, including a strain, but he has 4 damage or less, then you would consider, because of the way the timing works, revealing his order card, paying a force for payday, giving him the 3 damage, right? clears his strain, then regeneration triggers, and you have a shiny new lizard man. So it's important that you know that little thing, right? He's got explosive ordnance. So for a force, you choose an enemy character within 5. You roll 5 attack dice. Each unit within 2 of the character suffers a damage for each expertise, and then you can dash. Notice, and I've got a screen grab from the forum, you can, if there's no enemy characters within 5, you can still use the ability. But if there is an enemy character within 5, you do have to pick it, even if you'd rather not, because maybe he's surrounded by your allies, and the allies will all potentially take a damage. In my head, explosive ordnance has something to do with objectives. It has nothing to do with objectives. I keep thinking it has something to do with objectives, and it really doesn't. It's just any character within 5. There you go. And then he has a revenge trigger, so we have a job to do. When another allied bounty hunter is wounded by an attack, after effect is resolved, the unit's ability, you can dash toward the character that made toward a character in that allied unit. So you're dashing towards the person who was wounded, okay, and then you can make a 5 dice attack targeting the enemy that caused the effect. It's not the best revenge in the world, but it is free. I don't know if you're going to pay for it after Bosk is wounded. You might, if the board suggests that you will. He has a max damage of 8, and just given that you're running in a list with IG88, where again you're getting those 10 dice attacks, it doesn't feel unreasonable that you're going to roll 10 dice and maybe see the end of your tree if you roll well. He has decent expertise tables. They're not the best, but he has decent expertise tables at range and in melee. He slightly, I think, whoops, sorry, Scrippy yawning at you. He slightly prefers being at range, sure, which is what he's going to be at most of the time when he's doing stuff. His defensive expertise is not great, right? But, you know, he costs 3. And I think in a bounty hunter's list for a 3 cost, he's doing a lot. I really like Bosk. I think that slotting Bosk into other lists that aren't bounty hunters and then ignoring that we have a job to do. But yeah, in a bounty hunter list, I think it brings you a lot for 3 points. It's about Grief Karga because he's the other 3 point that is competing with Bosk. Now he's not a bounty hunter. He has no way of becoming a bounty hunter. He can't, therefore, if he kills somebody, he's only regenerating 1 force, and if he can't have extra dice from IG, right? But what does he do? So he's got a tactic for a force. You can move each allied bounty hunter within 4, and they also heal. Now, these kind of abilities, Kalani, Boss, you know, really powerful if you get the draw order right. If you activate him, it's like, oh, all the bounty hunters here are within 4. Amazing. Everybody gets to dash. And late game, you heal off those pins and everyone gets to dash. Like, and that is really what makes Grief Karga appealing, because there's not a lot of out of activation movement in bounty hunter list, and he does give you some out of activation movement. He has Close the Deal, which is also a really, really nice ability. It's the same ability that Django Fett has, except that he can farm it out to other bounty hunters. So, again, for a force, when someone activates a unit from reserve, you can use this ability, choose an allied bounty hunter, the chosen character, and can dash towards and make a 5 dice attack, choosing the character in the unit that was chosen to activate. This is really good because often when someone activates a character in reserve, they're going to be near your guys, right? Because usually the moment they're waiting to activate them, they're usually going to do something on that turn. So being able to instantly go, you activate this unit in reserve, here comes an activation 5 dice, is also really good. And then you've got a couple of passives. So there is one job which is confusing. It's not that confusing, it's just long, right? Before revealing the top card on the mission deck, choose an opposing player to reveal cards from their order deck until a unit order card is revealed. Then the chosen player marks the corresponding unit with a priority objective token, shuffles the order deck, The first time an allied bounty hunter wounds the marked unit, move the struggle token one space towards your momentum token, and then remove the priority objective token. It's free, and it's potentially an extra momentum. It's an extra like struggle pull at some point. It's fun and thematic. Obviously, in some games you're going to be like, oh, cool, my priority target is these Ewok hunters, or these rebel commandos, or something else that is a reasonably easily wounded support that I was definitely going to try and wound anyway. And sometimes it's going to be the Mandalorian or Darth Vader, and you're just going to be like, yeah, never mind, mate. Like I'm not getting that extra thing. But it's hard to complain about what is effectively a little bit of a free buff. And then he also has wolves at my back. He breaks ties. So like this side of his card is actually really good. He is a 3-point, right? That brings you out of activation movement. He brings you the ability to react to someone coming out of reserve by doing a 5 dice, right? Just whenever you want, right? And he breaks ties. So why do people not like him? And it's all to do with his stats card. It's just the worst expertise tables in the game, I think. Yeah, you probably gonna get 1 crit from expertise, right? Cool. And then if you get 2 down your tree, you can do on your 5 dice that you've got there. You can do a pin and a push, which isn't bad. Might get you off an objective. That's probably his best shout, is to go for the pin and then the push. He can get a dash. He's not going to get more than 3 successes through, I wouldn't have thought, right? But potentially there's 2 pushes and there's a repo back there as well. I struggle with it because part of me is like, I need to paint him up and get him on the table because he does have a lot of stuff, right? He's a lot of stuff. And there are a lot of other, like, if he was tagged to go with other things, there are a lot of other people that would grab his card with both hands, right? And put it into their list. But I think it's a real shame not to use Bosk. Bosk is a lot cooler than Grief Karga, but also Bosk just like getting that, doing the thing, synergizing, being able to put out loads of wounds, right? So rather than adding new things that your list can do, Bosk is adding more to the one thing that your list is focused on doing, right? Because it's a killing thing list. So now we're going to look at IG-11. So this is one of our 5-point support options. He's a bounty hunter, right? So he's getting those extra dice from our friend, the other IG. He has an amazing tactic where he gets to just go, oh, I've activated, I've removed a condition, and I'm going to do a dash. And it's like, cool. So suddenly your opponent, if you're playing an opponent whose game plan is, I like to put out pins and or strains on my opponent, IG-11 just goes, I'm going to remove this condition that you thought was going to ruin my turn and then take my entire turn unmolested, thank you. Which is good. Multi-thread targeting protocol gives him, so this is an interesting one. It gives him a second attack as part of a combat action. So after he makes his attack, he can use the ability to do a second attack. So it is a reaction to his attack, right? So you can't attack, then move, and then do a 5 dice. You have to be in a position where you have 2 distinct enemy characters, 2 distinctive enemy units, both within 5 of you when you start to make your attack action. And you have to do the 5 dice afterwards as well. You can't see how the first one goes. But we are going to talk about his tree, but you can see he's got that repo on 2, so you could do your main attack, hit the repo on 2, reposition somewhere, and then do the 5 dice attack, so that's pretty good, right? He's got, are you refusing my request? So he has a built-in personal version of IG-88's 3 dice at the gamble of a momentum thing. So he can, in exactly the same circumstances, for free, gamble momentum to add 3 dice, which means if you wanted to, you can double them up and gamble 2 momentum and get 6 bonus dice. For a casual 13 dice attack, which you would really hope would let you see the end of your tree, but who knows with the dice. I had a game with really bad dice with these lately, so it's kind of sitting in the back of my throat a little bit. Which if it doesn't come good for you, if you don't get the wound, then you do lose 2 momentum, which might suck. But you don't. Interestingly, as well, you don't have to have the momentum. You don't have to have the momentum to spend it. So if you previously lost all your momentum, or you've only got 1 momentum, then you go nuts, right? Bear in mind, you do start the game without momentum, and you can lose that cube, and you can't win until you have a momentum. But if you have previously lost all your momentum, or you've only got the 1 momentum, then go nuts, because you can't. It doesn't prevent you from using. You don't have to have the momentum to spend. It just takes the momentum if you don't get the wound, which is nice. Now, do bear in mind, if you're wagering all this momentum, that the maximum number of damage that our friend IG11 can do in a single attack is 7, right? So there aren't that many. There are still some. There aren't that many just 7 wound things knocking around in the game that see very regular play, right? I guess if you want to go for it, you've got the chance of doing a damage on 1 expertise in melee, or on 4 expertise at range. I wouldn't recommend trying it in range, but in melee, you might go, well, maybe I can do 8 wounds with 14 dice. It's tempting. But bear in mind, depends what you're going to do. I would tend to go for it anyway, right? But obviously the game state's going to help you decide whether or not you want to go for it or not. If you're going for it, you're going for it because you really, really, really want to get that push, or you really, really, really want to just get that repo on 2. You shouldn't need loads of dice to get the repo on 2, but it depends how tanky the thing is that you're going into, right? I have had some really good turns with IG11 due to that repo on 2, where he does the dash, he does his move, he does an attack, he's repo, he's on a backline point, and then he does a 5 dice attack into somebody else that hasn't activated yet, and that can be pretty fun. And then he has victory through combat is impossible. Victory through combat is impossible is really, really interesting. So IG11 has 9 health and 3 stamina, right? But while he's wounded, each time an opposing player gains momentum, if there are more enemies than allies within 3, you must roll an attack dice for each wounded and injured token the unit has. If you get any misses, you may dash the unit, then each character within 3 suffers 5 damage and this unit is defeated. Now, this is largely seen by most people as a downside and the reason that they don't want to take IG11, because people fear that he'll get wounded once, and then I'll constantly be rolling these dice, and then he'll explode. I have to take him off the table, and then I'm down too many bodies too quickly, and that's totally true. But right, I do just want to point out something that is often missed. Each character within 3 suffers 5 damage, so I really hoped this would happen in my game I was playing last night against my lovely wife, and it didn't. But if you've got a point and 7 Scorch come onto your point, and then they blow up IG11, and then IG11 decides that he's going to blow up in return, he does just wound 7 Scorch, and you keep the point, right? Because he does 5 damage to Sev, ignoring his protection, and then 5 damage to Scorch, ignoring his protection. This kills the 7 Scorch, which, if that happens, I don't know. Is it worth the price of admission? Is it worth taking off your one of your 2 supports part way through Turning Point 1? Turning Point 1? What game am I playing? Part way through Struggle 1? Possibly. Probably not. But possibly. Sadly, and this may also be part of his charm, right? In both the test games I've played, my opponents seemingly have been scared to wound IG11. Perhaps because they don't want him to blow up. Who can say? I will say his expertise tables aren't fantastic, but like you'd think, given that he can throw 13 dice, you'd think he wouldn't be that fussed about his expertise tables, but they aren't great. Han and Chewie for the money are the other piece that is competing with IG-11, and sensible heads on, they're the better options, right? So they aren't bounty hunters, but they are scoundrels, so you don't have to worry about Mando's things going awry, okay? They have 10 wounds, which is one more than IG-11. They can do a mighty 5 damage, but there's 2 of them, and they're allowed to target the same thing, unlike IG with his 5 dice attack that can't target the same thing. So they also have it in them to wound the enemy, right, on 4. And you can use, I expect, be well paid for force to put them into bounty hunters, and then you can spend another force for the IG dice, right? And then you're making 10 dice attacks and hoping to get 5 through twice. Like, now hang on, before I go off on one. That's not true, is it? Yeah, it's when a character. So only one of their 2 attacks can be improved for sure. Now, yeah, you spend 2 force to do that, but if you do wound somebody, you will get 3 force back, because you get a force back from "we're all fine here now, thank you," which means you get a heal and a force, and then because they paid aid into bounty hunter, when they wound something, Cad Bane will get them another a 2 force back. So assuming you had the force to spend on I expect to be well paid and the other force to spend on IG-88's ability, then you will get 3 force back at the end if you do a wound, and end proceedings a force up, which is cool. You could then, after your attack, you can spend a force to do a reposition, so they are somewhat as mobile as well as IG-88 if you don't care about splitting them. And then they also have Lookout He's Loose, which is pretty similar vibes to Cad Bane's Havoc. You spec a step aside, you spend a force, you now, unlike Cad, you spend a force and you get a dash. Quite often you'll spend the force to dash a character in the unit because that's what you need to do. And then if you dash into engagement range, then they can choose a character. Their character can dash. If they're still engaged, they gain disarm. If they're no longer engaged, sorry, they gain disarm. If they're still engaged, they gain exposed. It's fine. A push on 1 or 2, depending on which way down the tree you get. So if in some terrifying world that you only got 1 through, you'd get the push on 1. But I think in this list, with the extra dice you're getting, you're always looking at that top tree for the maximum damage. You'll get the push on 2, and you get the push on 4, and you get the pin, which is really, really powerful. And with any luck, they'll be wounded and pushed into oblivion and pinned, and it'll all be fantastic. I say sensible heads on. I think they're the better choice. They are very gambly in that you, like, you know, in addition to the normal amount of gambling, you spent a force and lost no momentum and failed to wound. If you've done it with Han and Chewie, then you've spent 2 force and lost no momentum and failed to wound. So they amp up that aspect of if the dice just betray you and you roll 7 misses, right? They can be really bad. But at the moment, I'm preferring IG-11 because he's fun and interesting, and you very rarely see him on the table. Han and Chewie are great, but I think potentially they're the better choice overall. But I need to play a game in which IG-11 really let me down to make me want to make the swap, essentially. We look at the bounty hunters. So the bounty hunters are kind of the default pick for their list because they have the bounty hunter tag, right? Funnily enough, they have 8 wounds. They get a free. Both get a dash towards an enemy at the start of their turn. They can spend a force to either disarm somebody within 3, feels a little bit pointless, or to gain sharpshooter 2 and impact 2. They have no way of getting a focus for free, and they don't start with a focus. So it's like, if you're in a situation where they don't need to move, so with their free dash, they can then shoot or fight in a useful position, then you can spend a force for tools to trade and get some extra dice. It doesn't often come up, right? Generally, what you're doing with these is activating, getting a dash, spending a force for IG-88's ability to get one of your attacks up to a 9 dice attack. Yeah, that's it, really. They're fine. Their stance, push on 1, great. Pin on 3, great. If you don't want that, then you can get 2 damage instead of a push and damage, which is also pretty great. The maximum damage potential is what, 3, 4, 5. You do that twice, that's 10 damage. Obviously it's only 6 dice attack the first time, and your expertise table will have Garbo, pure Garbo. So yeah, they're okay. They're a little bit disappointing, but they're okay. But you can, like I say, get those big 9 dice attacks, and if they kill something, you're getting loads of force back. So like I say, if you keep them together, you do the first attack as normal, and then the second attack you can consider spending 2 bonus dice. They might do the job for you. The other alternative is the pirates. So yes, they're a scoundrel, so you don't have to worry about Mando, but they're not bounty hunters. They got no way of getting bounty hunter. They're mobile. You have to pay a force for it, whereas on the trail was free, but it's not adapted to climb, which is slightly better. They can also climb when they're engaged, so effectively you can pay a force for a jump. Okay. They got steadfast on a point, which is really good. They've got an extra wound over the bounty hunters, which is really good. They have the same number of dice, right? Their expertise tables are still bad, but they're a little better than the bounty hunters, right? And then their tree, I mean, it's pretty similar, right? You can do 4 on 3 and a push, whereas the bounty hunters have to choose between doing 3 on 3 and a push, or 4 on 3 with no push. They've got the option of getting that repo on 3. Pirates are a little better, I think, than bounty hunters in general. So if you're looking to just drop a random scoundrel into a random, like, Darth Maul list that you're building, whatever, I think pirates are now where you go over bounty hunters, because their expertise table's a little better, because they've got steadfast on the point, because they've got an extra wound, because they can do the pack hunter thing to get extra dice, and because, yes, they have to pay a force for it, so it depends, I guess. You might want bounty hunters if your list's really tight on force, because they get their dash for free. But if you're going to have the force to give them, then the jump for a force is also really good. But I feel like in a bounty hunters list, where you're getting the fact that you can potentially get the extra IG-88 dice, you can potentially get a revenge trigger off boss. You can potentially get 2 force back if you kill something. I think the marginal benefits there mean that in this list, in a pure bounty hunters list with all those synergies, I prefer the bounty hunters, but the weak ways, I think, absent that synergy, are the slightly better unit. Then there's another way of formulating the thing. It basically, you kind of contort yourself a little bit if what you really want is Dengar, or Boba, I guess, but most people reckon Dengar is better than Boba. And one way you can do it is just dropping a 5-point, don't take a 5-point support and just take bounty hunters and weak ways and get Dengar. The other way of doing it is by changing out, don't take bounty hunters or weak ways, and take Lando and Bartu instead. And then you can take Dengar. Now, is it worth doing that? I'm not going to cover Lando and Bartu in this presentation. I've talked about him a lot recently in my Rebel stuff. He's a scoundrel, so he doesn't mess up with the Mandalorians things. He has the thing where you can't shoot him until he's gone. He's very mobile. He can steal a point. It's not bad. Obviously, he's, I think, worse than Bounty Hunters or Weakway Pirates, but like not a huge amount worse. So the question is, do you want to take that hit, or do you want to hit him not having a 5-point secondary in order to fit in Dengar? So we're going to have a little look at Dengar. He has 9 wounds, and he has steadfast and immunity to pin, and that's a lot of what his point is. You cost 1 less force to reserve a bounty hunter, and this list does have characters like the Mandalorian and like IG-88 who quite often want to be reserved, but you do have a fair amount of force in the list with CAD, so you need that. I don't know. He can dash for free as a tactic, which is always nice. And then he's got his explosive regards thing, where if he's wounded in melee after it's resolved, roll 5 dice. You get to take a damage for every hit crit, which is pretty funny. It can mean that if you put him on a point, he sits on the point, doesn't really get taken off the point very easily because of his wounds, his steadfast, his immunity to pin. And then if your opponent does finally get him off the point, there's a chance that he then in return wounds your opponent, and then you potentially still keep the point, right? So I do get that, right? He does also have a decent tree. He can do, 5 damage on 3, which is really, really good, right? His tree tops out what, 5, 6, 7, 4, 5, yes, 7, which isn't bad. He's probably not going to wound things, so if you're going to get extra dice for him, you're probably going to lose momentum, right? But he can make 11 dice melee attack. He does prefer to be in melee. His melee expertise table is much better than his ranged expertise table. I think Dengar's a really good piece. I just think, for me, potentially not worth the things you have to sacrifice to get him in there. But he's a good piece. Final thoughts. Apart from things I've covered, do you have any other cool bounty hunter lists that you want to share? I'm currently thinking I'm just going to run the first list I talked about, the simple, all bounty hunters, CAD, IG-88, bounty hunters, Mandalorian, Bosk, IG-11. I think it is simple and it's elegant. And after all, I'm just trying to come up with a list to run once or twice alongside Cassian PLC, which is the main list that I want to play in upcoming Premier events. But let me know your thoughts, strategies, hints, and tips. If you love these characters, then how do you run them? How do you play them? And what tactical tips? Like, oh, I always reserve Mando, or oh, I never reserve this, or that one weird trick to doing well with Cad Bane is this, this, and this. Let me know. Let me know. Let me know. Subscribe, comment, like, so join the Discord. And I want to say a big thank you to all of my members, but especially to Alex, who is subscribed at the highest tier and sends a substantial financial contribution my way every single month. Thank you so much, Alex. If you think membership will be for you, we have lost a couple of members since we stopped being a Kill Team focus channel. So if you're loving the Shatterpoint stuff, do consider membership. Even at the lowest tier, you get almost all of the rewards. You get your own name on the colourful name on the Discord. You get to lurk in the members only chamber on the Discord as well, and you also get occasionally I do members only giveaways. If I have extra prize support from Shatterpoint GTs and Premier events, so recently mailed out loads of extra copies of the GT participation Shatterpoint cards and some season 1 foils and things like that I had. So that occasionally happens as well, and you get to watch back as well the live stream Tuesday hobby streams. They are kept. Anyone can join in and participate them while they're live, but members get to watch them back whenever they would like as well. So do consider that if that's something that would appeal to you. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you again next time. There might be a video tomorrow. I'm hoping to get a game of Shatterpoint in tomorrow evening, so possibly the next video will be Tuesday's live stream. We shall see. Cheery, 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 cheery. Bye. Thanks for listening. Bye, 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 bye.